Hi, everybody. Got another video here for you today. There's something I want to go over with you. Now, the thing that has me interested in talking with you today are a couple of things that I've been reading and a couple of videos and other things that I've seen talking about the history of the APBA baseball game and how J. Richard Seitz came up with this and he came up with that. Some of you probably know about this already, but there are others who may not know about this. So I'm just going to show this to you. I'll leave a link in the description to where you can find this, and we'll make this really, really simple, right? So this is a view of my screen. Now, before we do anything, before I talk about what this is, I'm going to show you, see, I told you I'm using Pop! OS, I'm using Linux, right? This is clearly Linux. You have a whole bunch of this other stuff that's running down here. I got Steam, Signal, I got all this other stuff, LibreWolf, and, OBS and all this other stuff, right? I'm not lying to you. I actually do run Linux. But what we can see here and what's a little bit more pertinent, hopefully this is big enough for you to read, this is a copy of a patent. This is available through Google and their patent system. This is a patent from a gentleman named Clifford van Beek, who was from Green Bay, Wisconsin. And this is a patent that was filed in September 1923. And this filing of the patent is for a baseball game that he created. Now, this isn't just any random baseball game. This is the patent request for a game known as National Pastime. And you're thinking, what is this National Pastime that we're talking about? Well, I'm going to show you something here that if you haven't seen it before might be a little bit surprising to you, right? So this is what National Pastime is all about. This is a figure of the game that he had created. And you can see here he had different dice rolls, 11, 12, 13, 14, so on and so forth, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 51, 52, and on and on and on and on. For, what is this? This is Witt for New York. This is Tobin for St. Louis, some names that you should probably know if you played with teams in the 1920s, late 19-teens. And what is this? This is what the boards look like. 1 home run, 2 triple, 3 triple, 4 double, 5 double, so on and so forth. And if you don't believe me there, look up here is a little bit more about the differences in the base situations. This is what we had: home run, triple, triple, double, double, so on and so forth, with the base is full. And here's one with a runner on second base. Now, we're not going to go too deep through the old-fashioned style language other than to say that the true inventor of the first playing boards was not J. Richard Seitz. It was actually Clifford van Beek, and this is the proof. Like I said, I will offer you a link to this so you can look at it yourself. I will also put in a link on this video to the Board Game Geek site for National Pastime, which is the game that Clifford van Beek created. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this in case you don't know. We know for a fact that J. Richard Seitz played this game. We know that he had this game. We know because when he died, we found his copy of the game. I didn't find it. Seitz died in, 1992? I was 8 years old. All right, so it wasn't me. But the people in the APBA community did find that among his possessions. He kept on to his boards and his old cards for all of those decades and decades and decades. He and his friends had this copy of National Pastime, which I believe belonged to J. Richard Seitz, and they started up their own league, and they called it the American Professional Baseball Association, APBA, which is where the name APBA comes from. That is the history of APBA baseball. Now, National Pastime is interesting, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go forward. We can do more of these videos. I'm going to do some blog posts here in the near future. There'll be tons of information there for you to read and tons of stuff to look at and to talk about and to fling comments at each other and do all this other stuff that we want to do. The thing is that National Pastime, when it came out, had no pitching system, right? That is what Seitz added. He added on a pitching system, a fielding system, and over time, eventually a bunt system and a hit-and-run system. And he did a good job with these systems, too. This wasn't some amateur effort. The pitching system especially, which earns a lot of criticism from different people, really ought to be commended. But you have to know that the guts of the game were not created by J. Richard Seitz. They were created by Clifford van Beek. Now, I mean, this might be shocking. This was shocking to people when it was discovered in the early 1970s, right? There were people like Fritz Light, who was the vice president of APBA, who didn't believe it until he met Clifford van Beek, who was still alive at the time, and saw evidence, which is the evidence I just showed you, which is this patent, right? The truth is that Van Beek was actually the original author of this game. In fact, if you have an old APBA box, if you have the old board sitting around somewhere, if you haven't gone greedy for the money like some of us and sold it on eBay, if it's still sitting around at home, look at that box and you'll see patent pending writing on there. That's a lie. There was no patent pending. They couldn't patent it. It was already patented. Right now, we're not going to say that, oh, well, Seitz, committed copyright infringement or something like this. I mean, this patent was approved in 1925. Seitz came out, he started selling his game in 1951. Everything had expired by then already. So we know that it was perfectly fine for Seitz to do what he did, but just know that this isn't Seitz's game. Right? I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but when you're talking about stuff like, oh, Seitz didn't change the boards that much because, he wanted to keep the integrity of the game together and stuff like that. Now, Seitz didn't change the boards because he didn't make the boards. It was another man's boards. The reason why, when you look at the APBA Master Game, the Master Game boards look like the basic game boards is because they're not Seitz's boards, they're Clifford van Beek's boards. The stuff that Seitz created are all a bunch of, innovations that add on to the game. They're not bad innovations, right? You have to be careful with this here. If you are, sort of an expert on some of the old posts on the APBA Between the Lines message board over there on Delphi. And Delphi Forums is awful, right? I hate going on there. It's horrible. Searching on it's a pain, even when you pay money like I do. But if you go on there and if you go back to posts from 2003 or so, back when a gentleman named Robert Henry was posting before he passed away, Robert Henry would talk about his disappointment in discovering that this game that he loved when he was younger was actually created by an orphan teenager who is Clifford van Beek, and then was finally sold by this guy, J. Richard Seitz, who came up with innovations that were not necessarily always of the highest quality, right? You have to be careful with that, okay? The game is still good. The game plays well. Van Beek made a very good game with some very, very excellent aspects to it. Seitz had created a great pitching system with a great fielding system that worked well. It worked so well that he created the entire industry of sports simulations, right? I mean, he actually did. This actually happened, right? He wasn't a complete failure. The guy died a millionaire, right? And there's a reason why we're still talking about this today. There's a reason why you're watching this video. Right, so just know that this isn't to disparage what Seitz did. This isn't to say that, Van Beek was just some teenager who didn't know what he was doing and just came up with this thing and who cares about it. That's what Robert Henry would tell you. That's not true. That's not true at all. This is actually pretty remarkable stuff. But when we're going to talk about the history of APBA boards, we need to be accurate. And the accurate truth about this is that the original game was National Pastime. It was created by Clifford van Beek. I don't have it, but in the community, the Seitz National Pastime boards exist. Seitz wrote on the boards notes about what he was going to change and what modifications he was going to make, and he spent a lot of time playtesting, a lot of time fiddling around with it, right? That's the way that it is. There's indisputable historical evidence, but there's nothing more indisputable than this U.S. Patent Office application. So there you have it. That's the real history behind the APBA boards. And I hope that you have a good day, and I will see you with more of these tomorrow. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.